Well, good afternoon. My name is Yusuf Khaled. I'm the Student Council President of John Jay. It is my honor to welcome everyone and introduce our special program. As we celebrate Black History Month, we aim to not only recognize the accomplishments of thought leaders and trailblazers, but also learn from their experiences and work that continues to be pursued in order to achieve equity and justice. Therefore, I am excited to hear from First Deputy Mayor SHEENA Wright, the first Black woman serving in this capacity. In this position, the Honorary SHEENA Wright focuses on advancing the Adam administration's priorities and drives coordination across government to improve service delivery for all New Yorkers to thrive. I am confident that her story will leave a lasting impression, inspiring us and giving us a reason to believe in ourselves and in our capabilities to serve our communities. Mayor, First Deputy Mayor by Mayor Adams, a John Jay alumnus, Ms. Wright serves as Deputy Mayor for Strategic Initiatives before transitioning to government service. She was the first female president and CEO of United Way of New York City and the president and CEO of Obsidian Development Corporation. She also practiced law at two prestigious law firms. As a champion for social and economic mobility throughout her career, First Deputy Mayor Wright is a role model who exemplifies the college's mission of educating and pursuing justice. Thank you, First Deputy Mayor, for sharing your time and insight with us. Please welcome her. It is also my honor to introduce our very own President, KAROL V. Mason. President Mason is a legal pioneer and an exceptional voice for equity, racial justice, and criminal justice reform. Through her work at John Jay, she was also advancing student success. Prior to coming to John Jay as the first woman and first African-American president, she served as Deputy Associate Attorney General and later led the Office of Justice Programs. President Mason, thank you for facilitating this conversation. As the world evolves, it is crucial to have and participate in conversations like this one. Thus, we would like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Khaled. It is so nice to have you as our president of our student body. And I am so excited about the conversation we're going to have today with First Deputy Mayor SHEENA Wright. And for those of you who don't have a pen and paper handy, get one, because she is always full of so much wisdom. And I look forward to this conversation and being inspired by her, as she always does. So I'm going to start by asking her to give us some introductory remarks before we go into our Q&A. So First Deputy Mayor SHEENA Wright.
Well, thank you. My first remarks are really ones of thanks and appreciation. Thank you, Yusuf, for your leadership and congratulations on the role. And President Mason, you have been a friend and a partner. I'm grateful for your leadership of this really important, incredible institution in the city of New York. So I just want to say thank you. I feel very blessed to be in the role as the first deputy mayor of the city of New York and to really be of service, to really move the agenda in meaningful and measurable ways for the people of this city.
So thank you. Let's begin the conversation. And for those of you who don't know, we'll get into her background later, but I thought let's frame it by making sure everyone understands what is the job of the first deputy mayor. I know that you just assumed this new role January 6th, but you've been key in this administration from its inception. So tell us what your new role involves.
It is a big job. I mean to say, it's a big city. So when you think about the city of New York and its operations, right? The trash has to get picked up, the buses kind of have to move, kids have to get educated in schools. There's very fundamental work that needs to happen every single day, in addition to making sure that we have policies and plans to move the city forward, right? To improve educational outcomes for young people, to make sure that we are safer, that there is a greater degree of public safety and community well-being, to improve health conditions. So the job of the first deputy mayor, the mayor has described it in a football analogy. The offensive coordinator, and we just had the Super Bowl. I don't know that much about football, but I think this is a good analogy. The offensive coordinator's responsibility is making sure that the players get down the field and make a touchdown. So you have to draw out the plays. We're measuring and monitoring the execution of policies and programs and plans. You also have to be responsive to the unexpected, and every day there's something unexpected that's happening in the city of New York. And so you have to be able to pivot and shift and really kind of command the troops. So all of the deputy mayors report up into me, whether it's operations that manages climate and sanitation and sustainability and parks, economic and workforce development, the deputy mayor of health and human services, you know, all of these things, the chief technology officer, housing is a big piece of the work. So it's all of the things that make New York go. One of my responsibilities, you know, is really to make sure that the mayor's mission is achieved and that we're executing and moving the ball down the field.
So in case everybody's, it's a big job. It's a
big
huge job. And, but you didn't just land in this job. You had a pathway there that I think it would be important for our students to hear. And so some of us know that you were a prodigy and you went to college at 16. So let's start there and tell people your pathway to how you got to be the first deputy mayor.
Well, you know, it starts, I'm a New Yorker. I love this city deeply. I was born and raised in the South Bronx at a time where the Bronx was burning. It was very challenged. My mother was a teenager when she had me and my sister. She was 15 when she had my sister and 17 when she had me. And it was tough in terms of financially, but we grew up in a community that had a lot of love. There, I was nurtured and supported from an early age and taught from the very beginning that whatever you want to achieve, it is possible. And so that was kind of poured into me as an early age. And my mother was really a social justice advocate, warrior, and she crafted an amazing public service career. So I grew up watching her and the work that she's done. And I think for me and my travels, I really, you know, one, being a Black woman from the South Bronx certainly was often underestimated and did not have equitable access to opportunity to quite frankly reach my full potential. And my mother had to fight on my behalf. I knew, you know, as Condoleezza Rice said, right, you got to be twice as good and kind of all of those things. And there was a lot of inequity. And so part of, I think, what my purpose is to really kind of break barriers for communities of color, for low-income communities, for people across this city in particular who just don't have equal access to opportunity. And so my career trajectory has been in the corporate space, the nonprofit space, and now in government, doing just that.
So you, for those again who don't know your full story, you have moved between different sectors. You started practicing law, as Khalid Yousef said, in a private large firm, and then you moved to the nonprofit sector and now to government. Are there skills and things that you learned on that pathway that you want to make sure our students hear about that will help them with their life journey, regardless of whether they're in private sector, government, or nonprofit?
Absolutely. So as I said, kind of growing up in the South Bronx, and in the South Bronx, unfortunately, at the time, the educational institutions were just not very good. And my mom had to lie and say we lived in the North Bronx. And that's where I got my first taste of quality education. And then went to boarding school for high school. I got a full scholarship, and then went on, as you said, President Mason, to Columbia when I was 16 years old and graduated when I was 20. I went to law school because I did not know what I wanted to do. I really had no idea, and I figured, a law degree can't hurt you, right? It'll be good. I didn't necessarily want to be a lawyer, but I just thought it would be good. But what I learned in law school, which was so great, was really critical thinking skills. And that has really carried me through all of the different phases of my career. Critical thinking and really being able to analyze and kind of dissect an issue and think very critically about it to solve a problem. And what I also learned in law school that carried me forward in my career was I didn't really have any exposure to the business world, right? I knew my mother, like I said, was a social justice warrior, but I didn't really understand the whole ecosystem that creates the kinds of conditions and communities that we have. And so when I learned, and I went to Columbia Law School, which is very corporate focused institution, I learned about the business community. I learned about private equity and capital and access to capital, and those of us who don't have access to capital. And what I learned is I wanted to make sure that I'm continually learning. Like, so as I go from job to job or place to place, be curious, always lean into the things that you're maybe not familiar with or you don't know a lot about, because that will lead you to the next opportunity and kind of lean into your purpose. So as I was in law school and I learned about the corporate sector, my first job was, as you said, Yusuf, in a corporate firm. And I was the second Black woman to work there in the history of the firm as a lawyer. So
And
there
this
was,
was in what years, so they can put some
this was
context?
in 1990. And women were not allowed to wear pants, which is just an interesting fact. So all of you will be like, what? Yeah, it was crazy. And it was so interesting because I learned a lot about the law. I learned a lot about complex transactions. I learned a lot about the financial world. And all of that helped me understand and hone in that I really wanted to be focused on economic empowerment issues for communities like the community I came from. And I gained a suite of skills and tools in order to deploy in the next job, which was running a community and economic development corporation in Harlem, where we were building schools and helping small businesses and working with seniors and, housing unhoused families and the whole suite of what makes a community well-being and really the economic and community aspects of a community. And I would say in that job, I really learned, again, how to span boundaries. In order to do community work, right, you have to be able to build coalitions and really connect people in partnership with you in order to get things done. And I think that's just a critical skill that particularly now people need. You can't just be in your own silo and very narrowly focused. Everything spans sectors, government, nonprofit, corporate, all need each other in order to kind of move forward. And then I would also say I learned to be persistent as well. There will be hurdles, always. You can count on it. If there's nothing you can count on, you can count on that. And just being persistent. I have a saying that I use all the time: you have to eat the elephant one bite at a time sometimes. And that's something that I've learned over the years and over the different experiences, professional experiences I've had that I think have served me well.
And again, your services when you look at your life trajectory, it's all prepared you for this big job that
Yes.
you have right now. What are some of the things, just to give people some context for some of your successes when you were at Abyssinian and United Way? What are some of the ways that you see the impact of you living in your purpose?
Well, one of the big things that we did at Abyssinian Development Corporation was create affordable housing and homeownership opportunities. And as I said, we also had several shelters where we were housing unhoused families with children. And, that is tough and work in a lot of respects. And I remember walking across, right, it was, I think we were Columbus Circle. I was crossing the street, it's a big street. I was walking and I was in the middle of the street and a woman was walking toward me. And she stopped in the middle of the street and she looked at me and she said, "I know you." And I was like, uh-oh, like, I don't know, like maybe this is like somebody, like it was a complaint or something, one of our residents. And she said, I was on the verge of being unhoused, and you all were a ram in the bush for me. And then you realize when you talk about these big numbers or statistics or demographic data, these are people, right? And so very much in that moment, I felt like these are not jobs, they're vocations. Like, this is my purpose. This is why I'm here. And being, from the South Bronx and knowing the struggles, knowing how impactful and important the work is, because I've experienced it myself. Those are the days where it just it makes it just very clear.
And when I hear again these stories and the parallels to, again, the preparation for where you are today with the city dealing with this huge immigration crisis,
Yes.
a huge number of unhoused people, help the young folks on this call understand how those early experiences have prepared you for this job.
Yes. And I think just in all of those experiences, I think another skill, and it's a skill, and people say soft skills or hard skills. They're all hard skills and they're all important, but it's the empathy. And I think in any and everything you do is having a level of emotional intelligence. The mayor talks about that a lot, but empathy, really putting yourself in someone else's shoes and having some care and concern for the people that are the subjects of the work that you do, whatever the work is, whatever the work is. So that is critically important, because if you're just kind of focuses on a policy or a program or the data or the demographic, and you're not really appreciating and centering people and their lived experience and bringing your own lived experience to the work that you do, that's when you're not making assumptions based on your own experiences, but bringing your own lived experience. How would I feel? How would that make me feel? I think those things are really important things to do. I think sometimes people think when you get in the professional world, it's emotionless and very I don't know what the word is, like objective. There's nothing objective, right? You bring your full self, and that's one of the things that I've learned in bringing my full self. So as the first deputy mayor, I bring my full self. And when we're working on childcare issues, I know what it felt like for my mom. I know what it feels like as a mother when we're making sure that the earned income tax credit is expanded for the first time in 20 years. I know what that means. If it's about NYCHA and improving and transforming it, and bringing all of that to bear is really important.
So your job as the first deputy mayor, as you mentioned, is bringing all these all parts of the administration together, again, in service of the mayor's goals.
Yes.
How are you building those coalitions and collaboration and partnership within the city and across these disparate agencies for those goals?
It's really about building team and teamwork. So one of the things that's really important to appreciate as well is that the commissioners, the leaders, the people that work in government, they're people too. And one of the things is that people gain an appreciation of working together. So building team and really solidifying those bonds are critically important in execution of anything that you're trying to do. You have to make sure that that team building happens. So that's definitely a part of the job, but also being very clear, helping to clarify what are the goals. What does success look like in meaningful and measurable ways? What is it going to feel like for people on the ground in the city of New York? And then what are all the tactics that we need to put in place to achieve that goal? And then regularly again, breaking down silos. This is not an operation where it's like, okay, you educate the children and you provide the health care for the family and you provide the housing. It's the same family, right? And so as much as we can break the silos and agencies are coming together right? Because people live in community, they live in family, they're intersectional, period. So government has to be more, just more flexible to respond to the intersectional needs of people in the city of New York. And so breaking boundaries, really building that coalition internally, and having a collective goal and agenda, making sure everybody knows what their part is, making sure that we're holding each other accountable for achieving that goal. That's a big part of the work.
And it strikes me from listening to you that trust is integral to all of this.
Yes.
How are you going about building the trust that you're going to need for all of these folks to see themselves as a team?
It's really about time, and spending time to get to know each other. Because once you get to know someone, you are really going to give them the benefit of the doubt. You're not going to jump to conclusion. And being in government, this is a service. I mean, people are here because they care and they care about the city and they want to serve their communities. So that's a very powerful driver to people who work in government, and really leaning in on that and leveraging that, and helping everybody understand, like, what's your why. That makes that connection, and then you really lock arms with people because you realize that you have a common purpose.
So you've worked in private law firms, Abyssinian doing the economic development, then you ran United Way. What is it that appealed to you, that drew you from all of the other things you could have been doing? Why was this job, being in the city and working as a first deputy mayor for strategic initiatives and now the first deputy mayor? What is it about this position that drew you in and said, this is why you're doing this now?
Yeah, I think this is a once in a generation opportunity to have monumental transformative change. As I said, I love this city. I love it. I mean, I couldn't live anywhere else. I tried to live in DC for a year. I was like, I can't, have to go back home. And in as much as I love it, I appreciate how incredibly imperfect it is. And it has the potential to really be amazing if we really make sure that our young people are educated and that their full promise of potential is on display. Like, what can't we do as a city, right? If we really make sure that there's equitable access to employment opportunities or business opportunities for Black, Indigenous, people of color, like, what can't we do? And so for me, when I was working at the Abyssinian Development Corporation and United Way, we were working on very particular issues and projects and programs and initiatives that were really fulfilling. But I felt like we were fighting battles and winning battles around economic opportunity, but we were losing the war, right? And I think COVID really laid bare for everybody just the stark disparities in the way the virus impacted low-income communities, communities of color. And to be in an administration with the second in the history of New York. New York's been around since 17 whatever or before. In the history of New York, the second mayor of color who is unapologetic about his blue collar roots, who is unapologetic about his racial identity and his economic background, and that we have the incredible diverse leadership. We have almost all women of color as deputy mayors. Never in the history has it been done, right? Women police commissioner, women fire commissioner, just incredible diverse leadership with a lived experience. It's the first Filipino deputy mayor, the first deputy mayor who is a Muslim faith. I mean, it's just an incredible moment to be here in city government with these dedicated folk who share common goals.
I love that the imagery whenever we see the mayor's cabinet and the deputy mayor standing up there, and how diverse, and seeing those powerful women led with you being the first deputy mayor now, chief among those. What would you, if you had an opportunity to talk to your younger self, your 16-year-old self, what would you
16,
tell
Sheena.
her knowing what you know now, what advice would you give her to prepare her and our students for the life that we know they're going to have? We know that our students are wonderfully talented and will be stepping into these positions that you have opened the doors for them to fill. What advice would you give your young self to prepare you for these things?
Slow down.
Mm.
I would say enjoy the ride. I feel like, as a young person, you're just so eager and like ready to go and like get to it and like, there's all this stress, and it all works out in the end. It really does. It really does. And the things that stress you out and that stressed me out, or that like, you know, um, slow down, take a breath, enjoy the ride. That's what I would say.
I was going to say, I hope they're all listening, because I know when you're young, it's like
It's
the
intense.
urgency, you want to get there and you want to do it, but you've got a long horizon in front of you. So thank you for reminding us to slow down and take that time. So our students, many of whom, most of whom go into public service.
Mhm.
If you were trying to, which we hope you will, recruit our students into public service and into working for this wonderful monumental opportunity for transformative change that the city has, what would you tell them to entice them into this partnership with you, coming to work for this administration?
And I think I would say, I don't know where else in the country you can have monumental change. And the city of New York, right? We are the biggest city in the country. We contribute 6% of the nation's GDP. The kinds of things that we do are a model for other cities. There's an opportunity in this kind of post-COVID world. The world has changed dramatically, and there's just an opportunity to innovate, to really get a lot of responsibility very early on, to see and touch and feel a lot of diverse jobs and opportunities, and to be mentored and supported in a career path and growth. It is, I think, a remarkable time to work for the city of New York and government, with all of these incredible kind of leaders and managers and coworkers that are here. It's really, really an exciting time.
So, and you have one of our recent graduates working on your team, or I assume you took her with you to the first deputy mayor's office, Katanji.
She actually went back to graduate school.
Oh,
So she's full-time, but she's still, connected. She's still a part of the family.
Good.
But absolutely, she, I think we encouraged her to really further her educational opportunities, because what's next is going to be just even more amazing for her.
And our students listening, the way I found out that she was working there, we Erica Bond and I had the opportunity to work on some transition work with First Deputy Mayor SHEENA Wright. And when we opened up a Zoom meeting to talk about our report, there was a John Jay grad right there at the front of this. So we've talked about the work. What do you do to find balance, to bring joy, to center you as you do this important work? Because there's got to be some fun part of this as well.
It's got to be fun. And that's also the great thing about New York, right? We have the most fun things to do. I love music. So going to see live performances are great. I love, the performing arts. So whether it's going to see Alvin Ailey, which is where I think I saw you recently.
That's right.
I love the parks. We have some of the most amazing parks on the planet. So enjoying, Central Park. I live in Harlem, so up north, Riverside Park, which I love. So, New York is really just a lot of incredible cultural institutions, clubs and kind of all the things. There's a couple dance parties I'd go to every year. I like to dance. I grew up when hip hop was born, baby. I'm from the boogie down Bronx. So doing all of those things are really important, and making time for that.
Well, someone wants to keep this theme going, and they want to know, what activities did you do as an undergrad that had an impact on your future?
Wow, yes. As an undergrad, I was very involved in the Black student organization at Columbia. During that time, apartheid, believe it or not, was still raging, and we were really active in trying to get companies to divest from doing business in South Africa. And it was really those economic sanctions that helped to drive the end of apartheid. I also was, Columbia had a curriculum that was just Eurocentric. And so me, along with some of my other classmates, we created the Pan-African House, which was really to kind of bring other and recognize and appreciate the contribution of people from the African diaspora on contemporary civilization. It still stands today. I ran cross country and track. So I started doing that in high school and loved to run competitively, and varsity was that throughout my college career as well. So I was busy and had fun. Listen, I went to school like you all do in New York City. And back then we had like the Tunnel, the Palladium, like all these great dance clubs. It was hip hop. It was all the things. So I had to have fun too.
I was going to say that you were busy.
It was busy.
There's a theme here.
Yes,
Which is why you tell your young self to slow down.
that's right.
So you, John Jay is a majority minority school. You went to Columbia, but you grew up in the Bronx. But
Mhm.
how what advice would you give our students when they leave John Jay, and many will enter work worlds that are predominantly white? What advice would you give to them about making that transition and succeeding in that environment?
I would say just to be very conscious and cognizant that more than likely people will underestimate you because of your race, because of your gender, because of your ethnic origin or whatever. People will underestimate you. And it's really important for you to have a good sense of who you are, what you have, what you're capable of, what you're bringing to the table. I, as I said, grew up in the South Bronx, and I went to a boarding school for high school. And that was really coming from predominantly Black and Hispanic community, going into an all white environment. And it was like a living environment. It was a great school, it was a great opportunity, but it was really the first time that I learned that people underestimated me or thought, because I was Black, because I was a woman, because I was from the South Bronx. I remember I had a classmate, and I tell this story all the time, white male classmate, nice guy, but he was just kind of like, really like, wow, you're Black, you're a girl, and you're from the South Bronx. He said, isn't that like having 3 strikes? And I was like, 3 strikes? I didn't know much about sports, but I was like, doesn't that mean you're out? Like, what 3 strikes? I said, but I'm the captain of the cross country team, like the head of the class, on the student, whatever. I said, no, that doesn't mean I have 3 strikes. I said, maybe those things make me resilient, make me stronger. So, so appreciating that. So when you walk through the door, some people are going to see who you are, the very being of who you are, as a negative. And if you don't really clearly understand the strength and the value, and just all of the amazingness of who you are, that can get in your head. And so just to be vigilant about that, and appreciate, some people say, oh, when I went to that law firm, I was the second Black woman to work there in the history of the firm as a lawyer. And when people said, oh, you need to go there and get all the good stuff and bring it back. But my mother said, no, you also need to bring something to them. You benefit them often more than you get from them. Because they are not around people necessarily, because we still live in such a segregated society, who are like you and who have the cultural diversity, the diversity of thought, the rich experiences. You bring all of that to whatever space that you're in, and there is tremendous value in that for the people that you're bringing that to.
And I love that example you gave, because I remember when I was a young lawyer in Atlanta, similar kind of thing. Only the second Black woman, but I'm 10 years older. So it's distressing to hear that the things are still
Right.
not where they need to be. But one of the things that one of the partners told us is that people will underestimate you, use that to your advantage.
Right.
And it's a strength, and that people, I hope our young people recognize, because people underestimate you, they don't see it coming when you,
Right. They're
when
like,
you,
what?
right. How did that happen?
Right. Right.
I didn't see that
Uh-huh.
coming. So it think of it as a superpower that they don't know about.
Mm.
One of the things that you mentioned early was your mother and the influence that she had on you. And I would say that she's an early mentor of yours.
Mhm.
Who else has mentored you? Who else would you put in the category of inspiring you to be where you are now?
Well, other women leaders, there was Harriet Michelle, who was the first woman to lead the New York Urban League. She actually was my mother's boss when my mother first started her career, and I really looked up to her and how she led, and the things that she did. I've always kind of sought out a kitchen cabinet to give me advice and guidance, and I think that's one of the things I will say. Ask people to mentor you. It doesn't just happen. There's no magic to it. Just reach out and say, I would love to learn from you. I'd love to have coffee with you. I'd love to get your advice. And people will 90% of the time give it to you. I've also had great mentors in school. So whether they're professors that I still am in touch with today, or administrators from Columbia, the law school, undergrad, even high school. These are people who are like invested in your success, right? They're invested. That's what their vocation is, and leverage that. Form relationships and connections, because they will help you, because that's what they've kind of pledged their lives to do.
So what I'm hearing in that is that relationships are important, relationships
Yes.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
And you've nurtured relationships, it sounds like, throughout your journey.
Yes.
How would you advise people about how to nurture those relationships and why they're important?
Well, time. You got to put some time in. I know we are focused on a quick text or digital kind of connection, but sometimes you've got to pick up the phone or spend some FaceTime and like bake it in into your day, into your week, into your months. To really build those relationships. I really believe that you build relationships with spending time with people. So I think that's really important, and not always, because sometimes I think people think, well, if I'm investing this time, I want to get this thing. And it's not a transaction. A relationship is not a transaction. A relationship is a meaningful connection to another person that will benefit you, and you benefit that person. And so cultivating and nurturing those relationships, you just have to really prioritize the time.
So one of the questions in the chat is about time
Mm,
and how to make those choices when there, many of our students are working. Many of
yes.
our students are also parents. And you've been them. And
Hmm.
how did you, how did you make the time, and how do you prioritize where to invest your time?
Right. So yeah, I worked certainly through college and through law school. And when I was in law school, I had a young child. My son was 1 when I started law school. Lord have mercy. I remember those days. And I think, just kind of building those relationships where you are. So at the job that you have, right, there's value in the people who are there to kind of build those relationships, like I said, with your professors and your fellow students. When I think about my classmates from college and law school that are still dear and close to me, these are phenomenally successful people that are, very helpful to me in my career, and I try to be helpful to them as well. So you don't have to go far to identify the people that you need to invest some of your time in. Yeah, so that's what I would say.
And keeping that thing about relationships and how, you know, you can build the relationship with people who are your peers. And then as you progress, tell them a little bit about some of the folks you grew up with and what wonderful things they're doing now. So they get a sense of the people sitting next to you in class, you know,
Right.
and why those relationships matter.
Absolutely. So, you know, when I was you know, I'm just thinking about all the people. Certainly one of my best friends in the world was my classmate in law school. She's now the president of Oberlin College. You know, we went to law school. Neither one of us are practicing law. When I was in college, I looked up to a lot of the other students who were in the law school who were really looking out for us. Ann Williams Isom, who is the deputy mayor for Health and Human Services now. She was the CEO of the Harlem Children's Zone. She was somebody that I looked up to and I got to know. Her husband was a student and he was the head of the Black Law Students Association. And they were always bailing us out of jail because we were getting arrested around the chaining ourselves in the building, trying to get Columbia to divest from companies doing business in South Africa. And he's a very, very successful private equity professional and really helping you know, companies of color get access to capital to kind of grow their businesses. So, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. In terms of like when I went to high school, one of my dearest friends was a jazz musician and he is the best jazz drummer on the planet right now. So a lot of variety of fields and growing up in the Bronx, one of my dearest friends to this day, she's a police officer. She's had a great career in public service. So a lot of great people.
And they enrich your life.
Enrich my life, yes.
So one of the things that our students hear a lot about public service and the contributions they can make through public service and working in governmental agencies and nonprofits. What's your view about the ability to make contributions that improve communities from the private sector?
There are lots of opportunities there. You know, I think it's important that we have representation in the private sector, that we're building wealth for our communities and our families, and that there's and really having people with a public service mindset in the corporate sector to really help push companies to appreciate that they are citizens and they have to have a level of corporate responsibility and social responsibility. I think corporations are most responsive when they're hearing that from their employees. That's when they're most responsive, when they're hearing it from their employees, when they're hearing it from their customers, certainly when they hear it from the regulators, but really their employees, because the employees, the people that work in these places, in these enterprises, they make up the ethos and the spirit of the place. So, you know, companies that provide an opportunity to do pro bono work, to be of service, volunteerism, you know, they have to join networks of people that are trying to figure out how can this company where I work and I'm spending my life energy make the city, the world better, is absolutely what we need.
So there is thank you for that, because we need SHEENA rights in every part of our world. So
And Carol Mason's, all of that.
and
Yes.
Youssef. So
Youssef,
one of the
yes.
questions that came up in the chat was a question about Bronx specific, about how we can partner with the schools in the Bronx to change some of the dynamics of what you grew up with to put those young folks on a trajectory for success. And I would start with saying, come to John Jay. But in addition to that, what else can we do?
Well, I'm so excited because kind of our educational agenda is really focused on ensuring that children and young adults and young people have pathways to success. There's a crazy statistic that like 15% of the people who enter, when you enter high school and when you graduate high school in the city of New York, only 15% of people earn a living wage job within like 3 or 4 years of graduation. It is just astonishingly terrible. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is about how to make sure that young people know that they're in school to build skills to achieve their potential goals and dreams. And what is that? So making this very direct connection to career, entrepreneurship, kind of those pathways is how this educational system is going to be transformed in this administration with Eric Adams as mayor and David Banks as the chancellor. We need college students, we need companies to provide opportunities for young people to say, like, well, what is college like? You know, what is the world of work like? Internships, apprenticeships, for people who are just not their educators and their administrative stuff, but to go into schools. Mentorship is hugely important, right? There's saying you can't be what you can't see. So doing all of those things, there are lots of opportunities to do that, and we need the education of our children to be a comprehensive community-wide approach that's focused on their trajectory and getting them on a pathway to career, entrepreneurship, and success.
Well, we have come to the end of questions. I mean, I could keep going, but I know that you have a really important job.
Well,
And-
I'm so happy to have been here, Carol. I appreciate you.
Yeah, but I want to give you time to give some closing remarks before we wrap this wonderful conversation.
Well, I just want to say, everyone who is affiliated with John Jay, I want you to know what an incredibly important institution that you're in. I was very grateful to have President Mason and members of her team to help lead one of the transition committees for the city, continue to be a wonderful, wonderful partner. I want you guys to just maximize every minute of the opportunity that you have to be in such an amazing institution. And as you graduate and you're alum, to make sure that you continue to nurture it, because it's an important institution. And you know, just really, really grateful to be of service and in partnership. I love your president. I think she's the best. And looking forward to continuing to make New York better as we go forward.
So I have to tell everyone here that you inspire me. And when people talk about mentors don't have to be older than you to mentor you. And I've learned so much from First Deputy Mayor SHEENA WRIGHT. We just met after the election,
right,
in a short period of time, and she has a wonderful persuasive ability to get you to say yes to things that you start out saying no to, and then you're shaking your head. Yes, we can do that in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, we can do that before Thanksgiving. And you know, when she talks about believing in yourself, she gives you the ability to believe in yourself by just, she's so inspiring. And so you are a gift to the city. I think with your leadership, because you could be anywhere doing anything with your talent and skills. And the fact that you are so committed to the success of the people of New York City. I tell people all the time, if SHEENA asked me to do something, my answer is yes.
Well, thank you.
Because I know that she's going to follow through and get it done. So our city is in great hands. The mayor's goals are in great hands with your leadership. So thank you for spending this afternoon with us.
Thank you so much.
The keynote speaker for us as we celebrate our history, Black history, and you being part of creating new history for the young people coming behind us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Yusuf. Thank you, John Jay.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.